Hey everybody, Deathblade here with another Yin Yang China, where I talk about the positives and negatives of Chinese culture from the perspective of somebody that is living in China as a foreigner. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about one of the this is, in my opinion, one of the most frustrating things to deal with about life in China. This isn't really a Chinese culture thing per se, it's just how things function in China. And basically, pretty much everything is prepaid. So from your electricity to your gas to your water to your cell phone, in most situations you pay up front and then you get the service, and then when the money runs out, that service gets cut off. Now as China develops, things are changing a little bit, so sometimes it's not always that dramatic. When I first got to China many years ago, it was absolutely a set thing. Like, you pay your phone bill up front, and once you reach the end of whatever you paid for, your phone would go off. You could be in the middle of making a 911 call about a bank robbery, and then your phone would just shut off. Nowadays, it's not so dramatic, and a lot of the services have things built in to where there's a grace period of a couple days or something like that. But it's still very much a pay upfront situation, and from what I know, in pretty much all situations, it's that way with power, with your electricity at your house. Now, when it comes to your water, gas, and phone, okay, those are not necessarily as crazy because, for example, with the gas, they'll usually have somebody that comes to your house to read the meter and knock on your door to have you pay, and they'll usually come back over and over again to get you to pay. With the water, usually the water is handled by the property manager of whatever complex you live in, and they'll usually put notes on your door and things like that, and they'll send people to come find you if you haven't paid. And but when it comes to phone and electricity in your house, it's pretty much just when the funds run out, it gets shut off. So, having lived in China for many years, I cannot tell you how many times, seriously, over and over and over again, I've been in a situation where either all of a sudden I have no service on my phone, either no data, or I can't call because I ran out of money on my phone card, or it'll be at home, I'm working, translating, or watching a movie or something, and all of a sudden, the power will go out in the entire house. So for the phone situation, it's a little bit easier. You can usually get a friend to, for example, add money to your phone pretty quickly, or you can use, nowadays it's easy to use WeChat to add money to your phone. In the old days, before WeChat, it was a lot more complicated to add money to your phone. Nowadays, it's pretty simple, so the phone thing is not really a big deal. But as far as I'm concerned, the power thing is still a pretty big deal. Many times in the past, it would be, sort of late in the night, people would be over to hang out, and then all of a sudden the power would go out. For a while, when baby Deathblade was a newborn, that was in the middle of winter, and the heating in that building was very bad, and so we had some space heaters that used electricity, and on more than one occasion the power went out in the middle of the night, and I was worried about it getting too cold in the apartment, so I would have to go out in the middle of the night, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, to a local, there are power company locations throughout the city where they have sort of ATM kiosk sort of things where you take your electricity card, you put it in, you put some money on it, and then you go back and you swipe it into the electricity thing at your apartment or house or whatever, and then your electricity will get charged up again and the electricity will turn on again. That happened many times. Now, there's a couple things I do need to point out. One is, most of the time the electricity cards have an emergency function to where if you run out of power, you can go and you can swipe it at the I don't know what it's called, the electricity box or whatever that's at the bottom of your building, or at the bottom close to your apartment or whatever. Usually there's an emergency fund where you can swipe it and it'll give you a very short period of time where you can still use power. Usually it's about a day or something like that, as long as you're not running 100 freezers in your house or something. So for the most part nowadays, when it comes to the power, if you do run out of power randomly, you can almost always go swipe and get plenty of power to deal with, you know, a party, or even if it's late at night and you want to have those heaters running. Usually there's more than enough power to run for a few hours. And so yeah, that's a really, really frustrating thing. There's no real way to figure out when your power is going to run out other than to go check the meter. And even then it's like, it's not easy to tell. Sometimes some of the meters will have a flashing red button so that you know, a flashing red light, so that you know that it's about to run out of money. But really there's no easy way to figure it out, and unless you put a lot of money on it and then just randomly go back at certain intervals to add money or something, you're almost always going to deal with a situation where you run out of power. And incidentally, to pay the power, like I said, there are usually power company outlets or locations where you can go to swipe your card and add money. Those aren't very common though. Like when I talked about the story with Baby Deathblade, it just so happened that we live right around the corner from a power company location, so that was easy. But that's actually not that common. Most of the time you have to go to a local convenience store where they can also add money to your card. The problem is that their connection to the main power grid company, whatever, is very tenuous. And many times I would go to the local convenience store to add money to my electricity card, and they would be like, sorry, no connection. And then I would have to trek to the power company outlet. Okay, so this is Yin Yang China, where I talk about the positive and negatives. Though I just talked all about the negatives, and I'm gonna now talk about the positives. Well, this is one of those ones where it's like, the main positive is that you have to just learn how to deal with frustrating things in life, and that's kind of a theme going through this series of videos, and it's true. There are many frustrating things about life in China, and learning how to deal with them, I think, elevates your character. But there is actually a very interesting positive to all of this that I have found, and that is that I have developed a very sharp sixth sense to be able to detect when I'm about to run out of money on my power card. Now, to my phone, on my phone, it's a similar thing. I really don't know how this has happened, and incidentally, I almost always put different amounts of money onto the electricity card, and of course, you know, the power that you use varies depending on the time of the year, whether you're using air conditioning or not. And the same with the phone, whether you're traveling or whether you're out a lot, depending on whether you're using data or not using data, making a lot of calls. But somehow I have developed this sixth sense where I can almost always just somehow know when I'm about to run out of money on the power card and on the phone card. And I know I know you probably might not believe me, but it is true. Whenever I ignore that sixth sense, almost always within the next day or two, I'll either run out of power in the apartment or my phone will run out of money and I won't have service anymore. So I don't know how this works. You know, this is one of those like really unscientific but absolutely true things. If you come to China, it won't happen within 6 months or a year. But if you live here for years, you will definitely start to develop a sense for when the power is about to go out in your apartment. And that is when you need to say, oh no, get that power card, I'm gonna run to the corner store, I'm gonna put power on it, I'm gonna put money on it, and I'm gonna swipe that card, and that way I'm not gonna run out of power in the middle of translating this chapter or in the middle of having a party. So I hope this is an interesting insight into life in China. The running out of power thing is something that I'm pretty sure almost all expats have experienced. I'm curious your thoughts. Are you an expat in China? Have you experienced this kind of thing? Do you have any funny stories? I mean, I have a million funny stories about it. I won't get to that in the video. Are you a Chinese person in China? I know there's not a lot of Chinese people in China watching my videos on YouTube, but sometimes my videos get ported over to the Chinese social media video sites, and you know, Chinese people in mainland China will watch them. I'm curious, what do you think about it? Is this just a normal part of life to you? Do you think it's unusual? Because obviously in Western countries, the power in your house doesn't work that way. It's usually a situation where you, at least in America, where you use the power, then they bill you for that power afterward, and they won't turn it off unless you don't pay your bill for like a long time. So it's different. And you know, what other stories or questions or comments do you have? I'm curious, leave them in the comments. And so that's it for this video. I do have a lot more content coming up. If you have any suggestions for either stuff related to Chinese fantasy novels. I'm doing book reviews now of books related to Chinese culture and Chinese fantasy. And of course, I'm doing this Yin Yang China series with Chinese culture related stuff. Please, if you have any suggestions or feedback, please leave them in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Gaozi.